Told as peace and reconstruction in Gaza is starting to look a lot like a top-down takeover dressed up in diplomatic language. So, with a Trump-led so-called board of peace, global power brokers, and barely a whisper of Palestinian consent, the big question is simple: who is Gaza really being rebuilt for? We are joined now by Sami Al-Arian, a political analyst and academic. Sami, assalamu alaikum, and welcome to Radio Islam International.
Alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for inviting me.
So we're hearing these different phrases, right? The Board of Peace, which seems to be some sort of an overarching structure led by Trump himself, Jared Kushner driving the economic aspect of it, and Tony Blair giving political cover. And then there's going to be a kind of substructure, a Gaza committee where Qatar and Turkey and others are expected to play a part. Explain the structure to us and what you think is the actual objective behind it.
First of all, it's very interesting how it's been structured. You have basically three different structures. You have one structure at the top of it, it's called Board of Peace, in which Trump basically has chosen the members, mostly Americans, his Secretary of State, his friend Witkoff, and his son-in-law, Kushner, along with the deputy of the National Security Advisor. The National Security Advisor is Rubio himself, his Secretary of State. His deputy also is a member. And then you have Miladinov, who is going to be the person who would be the liaison between that and a technocratic Palestinian committee on the ground. And Tony Blair and a few others, who one is a billionaire, and one is the president of the World Bank, and another is an Israeli businessman. And then you have another structure in which he has several people, basically international people, and I think they've been added into another structure to secure funding that includes people from Qatar, from the United Arab Emirates, from Turkey, and then and Europe. And then you have another committee that will deal with the administration of Gaza, the day-to-day administration. Reportedly, it's 14 or 15 people. The chairman said 15 people. When he was pictured with 12 people, so it's not clear, but let's assume it's 15 people. These are, as I said, technocrats, Palestinian technocrats. They were chosen and handpicked by Kushner himself. It's not clear what the role of the other parties are, because originally this committee was chosen out of a list that the Palestinian factions in Gaza submitted to the Egyptians. The Egyptian picked 15 people, but then we have different 15 people basically. The members of that committee basically are competent, decent individuals who were associated for a long time with the Palestinian Authority. The only major concern is the person who would be in charge of the police and security. He's known to be brutal, and he's known also to have targeted Hamas members in the past. He's a general, he's a police officer. So out of this really three different components, they were supposed to, number one, rule Gaza, and number two, be the legislative authority. And as you see, Trump basically controls all three, supposedly, and supposed to administer what's called Trump's 20-point plan.
So I suppose the great concern is that who benefits from all of this? Skeptics have said we've seen this before, the Oslo Security Subcontract, the so-called economic peace, technocratic rule under occupation. The concern is that there's no self-determination for the Palestinian people here. Even if Gaza was to be rebuilt, it would be for somebody else's benefit.
It's very important to understand how we got here. Back during the second and third week of September, when the United Nations General Assembly was meeting in New York City, there was a momentum towards the recognition and establishment, or at least a talk of a Palestinian state. Almost 160 countries recognized Palestine, and then several European countries also for the first time recognized Palestine. And that momentum was going on under what was called the Saudi French Plan. A day later, 8 members of the OIC, 8 head of states, particularly Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Jordan, as well as Turkey, Indonesia, Pakistan. They met with Trump. There he announced, under their concern about the genocide taking place in Gaza, that he has at the time was 21 and then became 20-point plan. So what it was a shift, really, a deviation tactic to change the conversation from having a political settlement and a Palestinian state over something that is more of a humanitarian nature. So this is the crux of it. He realized, Trump that is, realized that Israel was not able to fulfill its aim, its goal. And he is trying through this plan, through this process, to achieve through political means what Israel failed to do through military means, meaning that they wanted to dislodge Hamas from Gaza. They wanted to disarm Hamas and the other resistance groups. But more importantly, what the Israelis were trying to do is to make Gaza so unlivable in which the Palestinians will give up and leave. That has not been achieved. And the Israelis were having difficulties in pushing this, mainly because the Palestinians refused to leave. They are very adamant that they will not leave Gaza, that they would rather die than leave. And also partly because the Arabs, particularly the Egyptians, rejected this idea because it will destabilize the country. So what we have now is an attempt by Trump to take over this process. The real question here is whether there is a genuine process for rebuilding Gaza, reconstructing Gaza, or this is just another attempt to disarm the resistance groups and just leave Gaza in its misery in a way that they will force the Palestinians to leave. This is the real question here. If the Palestinians see real progress in terms of rehabilitation and reconstruction, despite the genocide and despite the role of the Americans in partnering with genocidal regime, the Zionist regime, then that could obviously be a progress towards reconstruction. But you have to remember the following. There is no political process here. There is no two-state solution. If you go deep into the 20-point plan that Trump introduced, you will find that after so many conditions that were set on the Palestinians, including the conditions on the Palestinian Authority, meaning that it has to reform. And when you go deep into what it means to reform, they need to change even the Palestinian narrative. And you say, if they do the following, if they change their curriculums, if they stop supporting orphans and widows, those whose husbands were killed by the Israelis, and all that, then eventually you can get to the 2020 deal of the century plan, which was rejected at the time by everybody. And what does it mean, the 2020 plan? It means that the settlements stay. Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, that there will be some kind of an entity, undefined entity without real borders, in which it will be an economic zone for the Palestinians, and it will be connected through tunnels and bridges, like Bandustans in South Africa.
All right, Professor, thank you so much for your time and for chatting to us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
That was Professor Arian talking to us about Trump's 20-point plan and this board of Gaza, peace board, all of that. What does it mean for Gaza? Time now for the headlines.